Flip Classroom Productions presents screencast number 3, Tweeting to Comprehension. I'd like to welcome you to another screencast, and we'll begin, as I usually do, by taking a look at the Common Core State Standard. In this case, we're going to be looking at the reading literature strand. We'll be looking at the 9th to 10th grade levels, and we'll be looking at standard number 3. The standard basically asks students to analyze how complex characters develop over the course of a text, interact with other characters, and advance the plot or develop the theme. This is pretty complicated because it's not a snapshot. As we go through a text, the students have to be able to demonstrate the length of the text, how an author is taking the character and developing that character. And so we're looking for something a bit more complicated and a bit more complex than we're used to in language and literature classrooms. And so what was interesting was I sat down and tried to come up with a reading strategy that I thought would work well. And I tweeted out to my professional learning community on Twitter. And halfway through a tweet, I realized, let's just use Twitter. And so the basic concept of this screencast is that we're going to use the social media tool of Twitter to have students keep reading notes and to promote collaboration. Now, in an ideal setting, the students would use their personal mobile devices in order to actually tweet out the tweets as they come upon them in the text and sort of invite people from the world community to interact with them as they read the text that we're dealing with. Some kids do not have those devices, and so I will be moving back and forth between actual digital models and a more paper and pencil model. Both, I think, will work well. Obviously, the digital model will give a little bit more of a real-world application to this particular reading comprehension strategy. And so the assumption is that many people know how to use Twitter. If you do not, you may stop this screencast, go to the Twitter website, learn how Twitter works, and then come back, because this is more of an application of Twitter as a reading comprehension strategy. And so as we all know, if you're on Twitter, basically users log on to the site, they have followers, and they follow certain people, and everyone is answering the same question, and that is the question, what's happening? It could be what's happening in your life, what's happening at a football game or a baseball game, what's happening at a concert. People are tweeting out the details of their lives, and followers are able to follow and comment back, and it creates this wonderful dialogue between people. And so we are asking that tweets are something that capture the most important elements of a situation in as succinct a manner as possible. It must be less than 140 characters, or Twitter will not allow you to post the tweet. Now, it is important to not focus on that 140 characters. When I first launched this with my students, many of them tended to try to be almost too succinct, that they didn't give enough information, and the tweets lost their vitality and became sort of vacuous and simple-minded, and were not really worth the time to write them. So what I wanted to do with this particular screencast is attempt to get people to up their content. And so we need to look at the anatomy of a tweet. And so this is Tweet Anatomy 101, and you can pause this screencast at any time and take a very specific look at what we're talking about. But we're basically looking at what a tweet is. And in this case, we have avatars and Twitter names, the actual person's name. Then we're moving into a link, if you want to put a link into another text, or probably the most important thing we're going to be looking at is the actual tweet text, and that's the information the students will be providing us. Then we have the tweet hashtags. They're going to be an interesting way for people to tag their tweets so that others interested in something similar to that would search for example, if you went on Twitter and did a search for hashtag cool science, Lance Ulanoff would pop up. This tweet would pop up, and you'd be able to read it. And then you could click to favorite it, or click to retweet it, or click to reply. And so this is just the anatomy of a simple tweet. We have to take this and tweak it just a bit in order to fit our needs in the English language arts classroom. And so this is the anatomy of a reading comprehension tweet. You'll see that most of the elements are similar. We're still answering the question, what's happening? We are going to be using the Twitter and reader name. Number 2, we're going to use the hashtag, and then we're going to put an acronym for whatever text we're using. In this particular case, we're using To Kill a Mockingbird, so you see TKM as an acronym for To Kill a Mockingbird. And then I have a number 1 after it, which is the chapter that the tweet is being harvested from. So any reader of this particular tweet could look very quickly and see that we're dealing with To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 1. We then put the content of our tweet, which is in reference to something that happened within the text of the book, and then we put a secondary hashtag, which helps to identify the literary element that's going to be under analysis in this particular tweet. So if you're having your kids deal with theme, it would be hashtag theme. If you're having your kids deal with plot, it would be hashtag plot. In this case, we are looking at the hashtag character because it goes back to the standard, the Common Core state standard that we began this particular screencast with. And then finally, the location services. This is the part where in the real Twitter world, your GPS in your phone would be enabled and it would tell your Twitter followers where you currently are on the planet. In this case, we are using location services at page 1 so that if we wanted to go back and look at where this particular tweet came from, we would be able to go to the chapter using the primary hashtag, and we'd be able to go to the location service to find the page number that we're locating this on. Again, it's a very nice, easy way to organize a reader's comprehension as we're moving through the text. So we have chapter 1 here, and I wanted to give you an example of a bad tweet. Please pause this particular screencast at this point and read the very first part of chapter 1. Welcome back. You can see that what's happening, the tweet that we have down below, this is a bad tweet. We have the hashtag TKM1, which means that we're in the first chapter of To Kill a Mockingbird. And we have the very simple tweet, he played football. Definitely makes the 140 character mark, but it's almost too short to even capture any of the essence of what's going on in this particular passage. Again, the secondary hashtag is wonderful, and the location service is great. So the organization's fine. It's just that this tweet does not have enough content in order to be substantive enough to actually work for the reader in any way that would help them when they go back and look at these. So I decided to take a shift and move into another field, and in this case, we're going to be looking at journalism. So what can Twitter users learn from journalism? And in this case, I have an example of a lead. The lead is the very first sentence or two of a newspaper article. It takes the entire story and it summarizes it in one sentence. And you can take a second to read this particular lead. And you notice that it answers the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how. So it takes all of the most important information, and using those journalistic questions, we're able to gel the entire story, the entire event, down into a lead. And you can see the connection between the lead and tweet, which is what we're going to be asking our students to do. So I also was able to go online and find a wonderful, if you want to take this to the next level, take those journalism questions and allow them to focus your secondary hashtags. You can use those in order to start. I find using the subject of your reading and using that to be the subject, the who of your tweet, works best for beginning level readers. But once you get into the process of using these with your students over and over again, please refer back to this particular diagram. It's wonderful, this table. It's a wonderful table that will give you better examples and allow the kids to go deeper and deeper into the text. So here again, we're looking at that first part of chapter 1 that you read before, and this would be the appropriate tweet, and it should look familiar. It's the one that we used earlier in the text. Again, it's the number sign TKM1, so we know that we're in the first chapter of Mockingbird. The narrator is wondering what caused his or her older sibling, Jem, to break his arm, possibly ruining his chances to play football. Hashtag character at page 1. So what we're dealing with here is, we know this is from chapter 1. We also were able to take that entire text and gel it down into this very simple tweet. It basically answers all the questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how that we needed, and gives us something that is complex enough that it will actually help the reader when he or she goes back and takes a look at this. It will help them to understand this particular text. And so this format of using these tweets will allow kids to take books and break them down to easily digestible pieces that they can go back and review for whatever project they're working on. I want to thank you very much and look forward to another screencast where we find another application or other applications for social media and reading comprehension. Have a good day.